Welcome to Light Over Heat with Professor David Yamani. This week I have some advice for my fellow liberals on improving our national conversation about guns. When I became a gun owner about a decade ago, I didn't stop being a liberal, and so I spend a lot of my time with a foot in each of two different worlds. And this gives me some perspective on the way that the two sides hear each other talking and some of the reasons why our national conversation about guns is so poor. And this really manifested itself quite visibly when the NRA met in Houston a few days after the massacre in Uvalde. And you had, on the one hand, the Institute for Legislative Action political rally inside the George Brown Convention Center, and literally across the street, across the Avenida de las Americas, on Discovery Green, you had gun control advocates yelling, "Shame on you," and murderers at people who were attending the NRA meeting. And this is not the level of conversation that we need to be having about something that's such an important part of our reality. So today I want to talk a little bit to my liberal peers about some of the language that you all use that is less subtle than calling gun owners murderers, but is nonetheless alienating of gun owners. And the first phrase that I think liberals need to give up when talking about guns in America is common sense gun laws. In his remarks on Uvalde, President Biden used this phrase 4 times, and the Brady campaign now claims that it has been about common sense gun laws since its founding in 1974. But common sense in this context is not a descriptive or analytical term, it's a rhetorical and political term, and what it says to gun owners is that if you don't agree with our legislative proposals, you don't have common sense. And that's not a way that we should be talking about or to our fellow citizens. So that phrase should be dropped. The second phrase that I think liberals need to do away with is protect children, not guns. Now, this particular phrase comes from the Children's Defense Fund, but we see variations on this all the time, including post-Uvalde on Discovery Green, signs that say kids, not guns, and language along those lines. Now, I think that there's probably nothing more demonizing of one's political opponents than saying that they don't care about children. I think of all people, liberals ought to be wary of using this kind of language about the need to protect children, because there have been so many moral crusades over history that have used this language that liberals rightly would find offensive, such as anti-pornography movements, anti-gay movements, anti-trans movements, anti-abortion movements. And so liberals ought not to also incorporate this same demonizing language of protecting children. And the last piece of language that I think liberals ought to do away with is other countries acted immediately to prevent mass shootings. Now here, what's typically pointed to is there's a mass shooting in 1996 in Port Arthur in Australia, and the Australian government acted immediately to prevent future mass shootings. Or there's a mass shooting in 1996 in Dunblane, Scotland, and the British government acted immediately to prevent future mass shootings. Now, when you use these arguments and these examples, what gun owners are hearing is confiscation of commonly owned firearms. And so the notion that there can be slippery slopes from seemingly modest gun control proposals, these common sense gun proposals that are designed to protect children, to the confiscation of firearms, is an argument that is going to trigger resistance among gun owners. So this is not to say that there shouldn't be proposals brought forward that would seek to reduce mass shootings, but if you point to England and Australia, or even a country like Japan, you are going down an alley that is not going to be politically successful. It's also not going to permit the kind of enriched conversations that we need to have about guns in this country. Again, next week I'll be talking about some language that I think gun owners need to drop. But for now, this is my message to my fellow liberals. If you're a liberal, I'd be interested to hear what you have to think about this.